Warning, this video will not be easy to comprehend, and it'll also challenge a lot of the conventional beliefs you had. We are approaching a critical moment where multimillionaires and billionaires will be made. There is a crisis that is incoming. You can either prepare for it and capitalize on an opportunity that most people will never even understand, or you could choose to close this video and potentially lose your entire net worth. My name is Michael Wang, and today I'm going to be talking about the US dollar. Just as a disclaimer, I am not a macroeconomist or a forex expert. Even if I were, that wouldn't imply that I could accurately predict the future of a currency and the entire financial market. This is for educational purposes only, so invest at your own risk. So, why am I talking about the dollar today? Well, that's because the entire world has been complaining about the difficulties that the US dollar has been causing as a key currency. While there are benefits to having the USD as a key currency, this also means that the US economy will take a smaller portion of the global economy and that their trade competitiveness and employment rates will be negatively affected. The USD as a key currency has its bright and dark sides. It provides benefits to major conglomerates and financial institutions, but causes a lot of problems to the average working class people, ultimately instigating polarization and conflict. The US dollar status as a key currency still remains solid, but with increasing economic and political costs, the US might have very good reasons to give up on their key currency status. And if you can understand what is going on and prepare for the big shift ahead, that'll easily make you a multi-millionaire, maybe even a billionaire. As absurd as it may seem, we've seen changes like this happen in history. Nixon gave up on the gold standard, and Trump abandoned most international agreements. Radical changes like these happened in a single day. As history demonstrates, the USD being taken down from its place as a key currency isn't completely impossible. Before I get into why the USD might not be a key currency in the future, it's important to understand the history of how this is all unraveled. And before I explain the historical context of how this all happened, please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe for more quality content if you haven't already. So during the mid-19th century, around the First World War, the United Kingdom's pound sterling played the role of a key currency. Back then, they used the gold standard, meaning that the currency was backed by gold. In other words, if you took cash to the bank, they would exchange it for a certain amount of gold. Around 1914, the UK was slowly losing its place as the hegemon due to massive gold outflow. Since their currency was pegged to gold, a trade deficit for them essentially meant gold outflow from the country. So during the First World War, they halted the gold standard, and in 1925, they brought the gold standard back. The problem is, when they brought it back, they made a big mistake of using the same rates as they did in 1914. This led to an even bigger and faster outflow of gold from the UK, which ultimately forced them to give up on their key currency status. The UK became the debtor, and the US became the creditor. And with this power dynamic shift, the Bretton Woods system was established in 1944. The Bretton Woods system defined all currencies in relation to the US dollar, which itself was convertible to gold. The rate was fixed at $35 for an ounce of gold. This effectively made the USD a world currency, as every other currency was pegged to it. However, this didn't just come out of nowhere. There were signs of a paradigm shift coming before the Bretton Woods system was actually established. For instance, from 1933, individuals were legally prohibited from owning gold. The Allied forces moved their gold to the US because they thought it was the safer way to keep their assets. And with 70% of the world's entire gold stored in the United States, the Bretton Woods system and the gold standard came to place. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There's a problem that comes with being a key currency, and that is referred to as the Triffin dilemma. Basically, if the USD becomes a key currency, that means that the entire world needs to use the dollar, which means that the US needs to supply USD to the entire world. But if they print more USD, the supply increases and the value of the dollar drops. But if the US refuses to print more USD in order to maintain the value of the dollar, there won't be enough dollar for international trade, hence a dilemma. In the 1950s, the Japanese and European economies emerged, and the US faced a balance of payments deficit as a result. The United States' government expenditure increased significantly due to their war on poverty and the Vietnam War. And with the credibility of the USD deteriorating globally, the world began to change their dollars into gold. Essentially, the US was facing a bank run-like situation, and Nixon had no choice but to abolish the gold standard and implement the currency policy. So then you might ask, why do we still use the USD today? With the gold standard, we were assured that we'd get an ounce of gold for every $35 we had. If fiat currency isn't backed by a commodity and is based on credit, what motivates us to continue using it? In order to figure out why, it's important to look at what happened between the US and Saudi Arabia. In 1933, not only did the US ban civilian ownership of gold, but they also established their diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. Standard Oil of California, which is an American company, obtained permission to explore for crude oil in Saudi Arabia. Its subsidiary company is called Saudi Aramco today, and as you probably know, this is an oil company with the largest market cap in the world. Then came World War II. Saudi Arabia wanted to remain neutral during the war, but with Italy's attack on the country, they had to find another country that they could rely on for protection. The US realized the strategic importance of oil around this time and decided to remain good friends with Saudi Arabia and fulfill each other's needs. In 1970, the US's aid to Saudi Arabia only amounted to $16 million, but in 1971, after the gold standard was abolished, they increased their aid by 20 times and provided a total of $312 million. In 1974, William Simon, a former bond trader from Wall Street, went to Saudi Arabia to conclude a secret agreement. The agreement stated that the US would provide military aid to Saudi Arabia and import their oil, and in return, Saudi Arabia would purchase US Treasury bonds with part of the money they received. This agreement was made secretly due to the United States' relationship with other Middle Eastern countries, and Saudi Arabia secretly purchased US Treasury bonds over 41 years. With this, the Petrodollar System was born. The word petrodollar comes from combining the two words petroleum and dollar. Simply put, this system allows the US dollar to be loosely backed by oil. The US found a way to force other countries to use the United States dollar by setting oil prices in USD. This means that if Japan were to purchase oil, they would first have to exchange the Japanese yen to US dollars. As the Bretton Woods system failed, the USD was able to maintain its status as a key currency through this new system. So you might be wondering, why did Saudi Arabia agree to purchase US Treasury bonds? If Saudi Arabia doesn't purchase US bonds with the US dollars that they received, it leads to an increasing amount of dollar in circulation, thus devaluing the currency significantly. And since this is obviously not good for Saudi Arabia as well, they reached an agreement to purchase treasury bonds, and this allowed the US to operate with a massive government deficit. However, the petrodollar system also encompasses the Turfin dilemma. The US needs to supply US dollars to the entire world in order to allow other countries to purchase oil. But a constant supply of US dollars means that the currency flows outside the country, indicating a trade deficit for the United States. And as you probably know from Economics 101, when a country is at a trade deficit, it indicates that their products are relatively cheaper in the international markets. In other words, the depreciation of the country's currency leads to an increasing competitiveness in exports. But in the case of the UK, because their currency was pegged to gold, a trade deficit led to gold outflow. However, that was not the case for the petrodollar system. Instead of gold outflow, damage was caused to the manufacturing industries in the United States. This explains the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt refers to the northern area in the US, which once prospered through the steel and heavy industry, but started declining in the 1980s. Cities like Detroit are dead cities today. So at this point, you might ask, what does America gain from this? Why do they try to keep the key currency status when it causes so many problems? Well, there are actually major benefits to keeping the dollar a key currency. For instance, despite the increasing supply, the value of the currency hardly depreciates significantly. There are also benefits to multinational corporations going overseas, and with the increasing demand for US Treasury bonds, foreign capital flows into the US. And with this, the US is able to keep the interest rates on the bonds at a very low rate. In other words, the US government is able to borrow money for a very cheap price. So with all this combined, the US's financial industry gains a competitive edge. But this system cannot last forever, and it's only a matter of time until we see a huge paradigm shift. In my opinion, there are 5 main reasons as to why this system cannot last. The first reason has to do with unnecessary military expenditure after the Cold War. The US played the role of a world police during the Cold War. But after the end of the war, massive military expenditure was deemed unnecessary and burdensome. Leading up to the Trump administration, the US continued to play the role of a world police for oil and to keep the USD a key currency. Secondly, we have the US shale revolution. This is when the US significantly increased its production of oil and natural gas, and as a result, became a country that exports oil from one that imported oil. This means that there is no need for the United States to play the role of a world police to secure oil supply. Then we have China's rise during the 21st century. During the Bretton Woods system, the US GDP covered over 40% of the global GDP. Today, it barely covers 20%. This indicates that the US needs to bear more financial instability in order to keep the USD a key currency. In other words, the cost of maintaining the USD a key currency increases in relation to the country's GDP. A lot of this amounts to China becoming an economic superpower in the 21st century. China also created the petro-yuan, which is China's attempt to overthrow the existing petrodollar system. They also once held the largest treasury bond holdings, indicating that they could cause a shock to the US economy by selling huge chunks of their position. Moreover, China has been exploiting the petrodollar system as opposed to other countries that have abided by it. In the petrodollar system, foreign countries are able to nurture export competitiveness and gain US dollars, which they return back to the US by purchasing US Treasury bonds. Instead of abiding by the rules, China decided to purchase real assets and global infrastructure with the USD that they gain. This way, the Fed has to support the United States' national debt, which destroys the benefit of having the USD as a key currency. For reason number 4, we have political instability, specifically socio-economic polarization. As mentioned previously, with the rise of American financial institutions and the decline of the manufacturing industry, socio-economic polarization started taking place and continued to deteriorate until present day. There's a discrepancy between economic classes, industries, and countries, and it's no surprise that polarizing figures like Trump from the right and Sanders from the left have gained popularity from the general public. Lastly, there's the decline of the labor-intensive industries. In the past, the US was no match against China's labor power, but with the fourth industrial revolution, automated robots and artificial intelligence can replace labor and thereby provide a potential opportunity for the US to gain competitiveness in the export industry. They could potentially let go of the United States dollar's status as a key currency, intentionally allowing the USD to depreciate and gain a competitive advantage in exports. While it would take a long time before something like this actually happens, I believe that the foundations are being laid for such a transition. So for these 5 reasons, I believe that it's highly probable that the USD will stop playing the role of a key currency. So then we have the great and most important question, which is, how can we profit from this crisis? This is the billion-dollar question that will forge multimillionaires and billionaires during this paradigm shift. In my opinion, finding assets that can provide a hedge against a massive crisis, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is the key to success. To me, one of the most prominent assets that can help me protect my wealth against a crisis like that is Bitcoin. And if you want to find out exactly why I think that way, make sure to check out my video on Bitcoin and why institutions have started loading up on Bitcoin. The link to that video is down in the description. So that is it for today, guys. The summary today is that I feel like the decline of the United States dollar is a matter of when, not a matter of if. Will it happen this year? Probably not. Will it happen in the next decade or two? Maybe, maybe not. I have no clue. But no one else does either. What's important is that the red lights giving us warning signs are certainly getting clearer and clearer. You can either risk losing everything from a crisis that might come sooner than we expected, or be prepared for a situation like that and capitalize on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you guys found this video to be helpful, make sure to subscribe and smash the like button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.